Hello and welcome to the Game Changer series of interviews for Global Entrepreneurship Week in association with Business Crowd. Today I have one of the co-founders of Business Crowd with me, Jason Pickering, who is the tech mastermind behind both Business Crowd and Love the Idea. What makes Jason a rare commodity in business is his ability to combine both the business acumen with technology. And one of Jason's special skills is providing a unique level of innovation for businesses that he works with. So Jason, welcome. And I understand today you're going to talk to us about businesses and how they find their eureka moment.
Yes, thank you very much, and it's great to be on. So I wanted to start with talking about the eureka moment because I find that a lot of businesses, when you first start out, everyone thinks they've got a great idea, and you go head over heels to try to get it off the ground. But not until you have that eureka moment is when you realize that everything that you've done for the past 6 months needs to change and you need to pivot. And a lot of startups go through it, but a lot of startups can't actually get over that hill. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can get over that hill and what to look out for, really.
Okay, that sounds great. So describe for us what you see as being the factors that create a true eureka moment as opposed to the, oh look, there's a squirrel, which lots of business owners can have of far too many ideas.
Yeah, and that's really important. That's a great question as well. I find working with a lot of businesses, especially on Love the Idea side, which we predominantly work with startups, taking ideas and turning them into sort of business plans and actual working businesses, is that you almost get idea cheating, where your sole purpose is to try to create a single idea as best as possible and not deviate away from that, meaning it's too easy to try to look at other people, look at other competitors, how they're doing it. That's important, but taking too many ideas on board from friends, families, and so it changes the actual dynamic of the business. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. A lot of startups and a lot of businesses kind of fail. So the eureka moment isn't something that it just happens as you're just stumbling along in business. It takes time. It takes a lot of grafting to sort of get yourself out into market. So if I explain it a little bit more, when you first start a business, you're going to have thousands of ideas. You're going to have a lot of different ways you can approach, you can tackle marketing, you can tackle hiring staff, you can tackle financing. There's so many different ideas you can go. There's not one specific right answer to that, but whether you're solving a problem in the market or whether you actually truly understand the market, that's a very different
Mm.
question because a lot of people who do start businesses, unless they've been in the market for a lot of years, they don't really know what it's made of or what it entails. So a lot of new businesses and people trying to start out fall into the trap of thinking, oh well, I can just do this, which is fine, which is great, and then they try and then it doesn't really catch on, and then they end up giving up, which is a sad case.
I think it's the difference between an idea and, I mean, I suppose I would say this game changer consultancy and all, but an idea and a game changing idea, a great idea. And
Yes.
the difference between the two is the application. So having a real problem in mind, and it's not a problem that's a perceived problem in your own mind. It's a problem that's causing real pain for people in their day-to-day lives. Without that, you probably don't have a proposition that is
Yeah, and that's
going to make a difference
yeah,
in the marketplace.
That's correct. And I think, but also as well, I think a lot of people um, create problems in their head, and it's quite difficult because when I talk to a lot of founders and entrepreneurs, and they come come to me with ideas and say, oh, this would be brilliant. I end up talking to them for a long time periods of time and trying to lead them down the path of, like you said, having an idea and turning it into a great idea. There's so many steps in between there,
Mm.
and it's hard not to fall into the trap of don't try to create the problem in the market, actually go and research it and then find the problems in the market. Because I think that's, again, very easy to fall into, really.
Yeah, you've got to be obsessive about the research side of it and what is the real problem, what is the real crux of a particular issue, because what you might be seeing is you might be seeing a symptom, not
Oh,
the problem.
yeah.
Um, so breaking that down and that thing of research, but equally a lot of people, I think, as you say, they see, oh, somebody's created this, we could do it better, and they're following, not leading. So it's also that piece. I mean, there are business basics which, regardless of how lean your startup is, you've got to do those business basics like competitor analysis, like understanding your market, like focus groups to understand what you're serving.
That's correct. Yeah, and I think a lot of people I'm guilty of that as well. When I first started, I was kind of thinking, oh, I know the basics, it's fine. I'll learn it along the way. But in hindsight, if I'd have gone, I can travel back in time, I would obviously give myself a book and say, sit down and read this. It'll save you a lot of time and money.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it's definitely important. I think regarding coming back to the Eureka moment, understanding the market is definitely a important aspect of that, but also the time to actually pivot as well. When do you know, and when's the right time to actually pivot your business? How do you know it's taken off, and how do you know it's not? So I'd probably say in regards to that, um, the actual process of starting a business should be quite a fun feeling. It's a lot based on feelings,
Mm.
and I think if your product is in the market and it's not sitting, you can definitely feel, are people kind of really excited, not just excited to talk about it, but really using it and excited and thrilled? Do they see potential in it? I think you can definitely feel that, and when people explain ideas to you, everyone has that feeling. Ah, it's a good idea. Ah, it's a bad idea. So definitely kind of going along with those feelings and thinking, well, if we're at this current point in time and maybe the feeling's not right, maybe people aren't being attracted to the business as quick as expected, then you might need to pivot in order to have the eureka moment. So I think that's definitely a good start.
It's an instinct thing. There is a degree of instinct to it. And sometimes you can have a really great innovation, but the market might not be ready. And a great case in point with that is if you look at things around video technology and mobile phones. The Apple and the iPhone revolutionized that, but the technology had been there for years.
Mm.
It was
Yeah, and that's
there was a
very true.
capability, but there wasn't the application, and it's that coincidence, isn't it, between capability, application, and demand.
Yeah, and that's right. That's perfectly right. That it doesn't necessarily have to be a new, groundbreaking, completely new thing, because most successful businesses are kind of built on older ideas, if that makes sense. So, as in your example, you said the iPhone, the technology's there. It's just kind of put together in a different way and presented in a different light. Um, and that eureka moment, I think, comes from when you do almost like a Rubik's Cube. You kind of turn a few cogs and you realize, all right, actually, this works a lot better. And that's the eureka moment where you think, well, that's definitely something that people love, definitely going to go down that direction. The more you can kind of turn those cogs and get the right colors going in your Rubik's Cube of business,
Mm.
I think, you're onto a winner there. That's bigger and bigger and bigger eureka moment. Um, but definitely, it's about demand as well. You've got to make sure that all these facets are all fitting together very smoothly. And how do you do that? A lot of people get scared of, when we kind of talk about, oh, you need to know demand and this side and that side and this side, because it's a scary thing. But all this kind of comes, I think, naturally as a feeling. I think as you evolve in the business, it definitely you can feel it. You can do your research, and the more understanding you have, the better going forward you'll be.
Interesting as well. You describe it the Rubik's Cube of business. Tell me a little bit about what that is.
The Rubik's Cube of business.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think the Rubik's Cube of business. For me personally, I think businesses they're composed of so many different facets and so many different ways you can do it, so many different paths. And again, like a Rubik's Cube, it's all jumbled up when you first get it. You don't know which moves to make. You don't know how to start, and you really need to almost just experiment. There's a great quote from Zuckerberg.
Hmm.
He says, if you're not breaking things, it means you're not growing fast enough. And it's only been this past few months, actually, that that's really kind of hung with me, because I thought, well, actually, that's so true. If I'm not trying new things and trying different combinations of this cube, then I'll never be able to find solutions. And you know, everything's all we do. So entrepreneurs and founders, all we do is try to find solutions to problems. So, if we're not actually changing and creating new ideas and, having that sort of spark of a moment where you think, yes, that's it, that's definitely the right way to go. And it's not going to be 100% all the time, because, you might think that's correct and then, oh, it's not correct.
Mm.
But as long as you persist on and you can definitely find different paths and ways, then you're onto a winner, really.
Mm. And I think to persist, you've absolutely got to have the passion for what you're doing.
Yeah, you do. I think it's one of those things, like, if work takes up what 75% of your life, your whole life. It's an incredible amount of time. Family and work, really. This work-life balance. So if you don't really love what you do, and I dropped that in because my company's called Love the Idea. But if you don't love what you do, then you never. I don't believe, me personally, I don't believe you're ever really going to be truly happy. You've got to love what you do, and you've got to be able to. Again, you've got to be able to do it every day. You've got to have the passion to think, if I can do this every day and I love it and I love the thrill of it,
Mm.
I can definitely succeed. And that's definitely an important one.
Absolutely. I think business is something that it's beyond logic based. You do have to love what you do. You talk a lot about the feeling, and it's the same as, I think business is the same. I always describe business as it is an art form.
Yeah.
It's like if you're playing sports at a competitive level, or if you get at a high level with languages, or a high level with playing a musical instrument. It's a feeling. It becomes intuitive. And I think what we have is the expertise and all of the things that you can do that are the right things to do, and the knowledge and the skills that you've got to have. But then it blends very much with a balance of the art of business, that knowing the right timing to do something, knowing the right chemistry of the people that you bring into a business is just as important in making an idea a reality, as I'm sure you find with Love the Idea.
Yeah, I do, and even with business guys, it's been quite hard to know to keep going, keep persist, because there's been definitely times where we've slowed down, and maybe even a month me and Sonny's kind of sat down and thought, oh, where do we go from now? You know, we're completely stuck, and maybe we need some more time to think about things, and that's totally fine. It's not a sprint; it's a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I definitely agree. I've worked again with a lot of founders who actually last year, you know, I worked with one founder, a young girl, and in the end, when we actually created all the business, which is obviously a frustration for me, um, she said, well, you know, I don't think I want to do it. I'm just not cut out for it. And that was definitely a moment in my life. I thought, well, you know, yeah, I understand that it's not for everyone. It's definitely something that you can grow into, but it's something that you really do want to grow into. If you're having the feeling of, oh, this is definitely not what I want to do, I know 100% I don't want to do it, then yeah, don't do it. But I definitely feel like it's something that I have grown into. I didn't necessarily know the art form at the very beginning. I see a lot of startups, a lot of stats out there saying that startups fail, and it's something that I'm kind of bent on trying to solve, because those failures are something that are solvable. In the market, there's something that, you know, if we can educate people about why they're failing, it's down to personality, it's down to process, and it's down to, you know, commitment and keep going. Then we won't see as many failures in the market. But it's definitely, like you said, an art form that people can learn, and like you said, almost like an athlete. You just keep training, keep going, and you're not going to have good days all the time. You have good and bad ones, but the good are the good, and you use that to leverage yourself and grow.
And I'm also
Great.
going to say something that's maybe is a little bit controversial here. Is it's like athletes; they come in all shapes and sizes, but they are born as well as made, and entrepreneurship is not for everybody. And at the moment, I think we've got a little bit of a cult of entrepreneurship going on, if I'm perfectly honest, where
Ooh.
everybody thinks that they could do it. But, you know, we were talking earlier about the distinction between entrepreneurship and a business person, and actually somebody who might be better supported to playing a supporting role. So actually there's no right or wrong. It's for people to get comfortable with what the right role is for them and where they need to be as part of that collaborative process.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. I like that. I think they do come all shapes and sizes, and I totally agree. I think business at the moment is just a almost like a hashtag word. You know, when you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't really have much backing behind it, because everyone nowadays wants to start a business, which is I personally, because obviously my age, I personally put that down to the culture in UK. I put that down to something that people aren't happy at work. People aren't seeing, you know, the benefits of all the effort that they're putting into work, and they see a lot of entrepreneurs excelling. So everyone wants to do it. Necessarily, if that's the right thing to do, it's a different question. But it's definitely a word. But for me personally, I've always wanted to own a business, which is very odd even for me to say that out loud. I've always, even from a little kid, wanted to own a business. It's not that I've grown up and had that chance. I've created those opportunities for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely a buzzword. I don't think it will last. I don't think it's interesting. I watched a program the other day about hipsters. I know it's a bit off topic,
Oh,
but
I know the one you mean. I watched it too.
I mean, it was great because it was. It's kind of on this subject, but it was talking about how, you know, these entrepreneurs nowadays, they want to get everything perfect, and it's very high priced, and you know, it's all about the story.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see that as part of entrepreneurship. I think the story is definitely important. The backing behind, you know, how people have risen up through difficulties is definitely inspiring. Um, but charging for the story, I'm not too sure I agree on. I think it should be solely down to helping people, educating people, solving solutions, and trying to make a difference in the community. That's what I think is the most important thing for
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, and that's probably what has been lost in this kind of generation of new business.
Mm. It's about the
I,
product or the service, and I guess a lot of this has come from the culture of funding and investors and the money that's available for that, and the stories of, I suppose, the founder now has almost become an icon, and a lot of people look back to people like Branson, now the more current ones, your Elon Musks, your Zuckerbergs and people like that, and they all want that. I suppose it's almost that meteoric rise, and what they don't realise is the years of business experience and the failures that went before for many of these people, which is not what you hear so much in the story. I think that is possibly people are wanting the shortcut. And actually, I mean, as you and I both know, it takes work.
yeah, well, I'm a man of cliches. Another Mandela quote, which is, "Don't judge me on my successes, judge me on how many times I failed and got back up."
Yep.
And it's definitely that. It's 100% that. I think it's important what you were saying before about. I'm not quite sure about the actual culture difference, because I admit I'm not that old to
Thanks.
compare. I'm not saying you are either. And I need to talk to someone much older than both of us. But I definitely think, yeah, it's the funding is. Oh, I'm very frustrated with funding at the moment in the UK.
Yeah.
But I see funding in startups as definitely a killer of startups, because a lot of people, again, a whole group of people that I've worked with previously, want to do a business and get it funded as quick as possible. And I'm talking in set up the business and in a couple of weeks have funding, or months have funding.
Yeah.
But what actually happens there is that when you go for funding too early, almost like you're writing your business plan in stone. Because if I've gone for funding, and I say this is going to be the business X, Y, Z, it's going to do this, we're going to target these people.
You're then accountable for that. You're on the hook, and you've got to do
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Got the
I
freedom.
come to you. Yeah, I come to you and I say, oh, by the way, this didn't work out. I'm pretty sure you're going to not be too happy and say, well, I'm going to withdraw my money. So I think, again, it adds to the death of startups, which is such a shame. Crowdfunding as well, you're just accountable to everything. But if you end up, again, down to the feeling of business, the Rubik's Cube, if you end up knowing how to solve these problems, taking your time over them, trying to self-fund as much as you can, making sure that there is an actual business proposition, you're solving something in the market, you're earning money, cash flows. If you take time to do that and do your research, then you're going to be in such a stronger position to go for funding, because people will want to fund into you instead of you begging them. So I think that's definitely the right attitude to take. And again, maybe it's just our kind of culture nowadays that everyone wants to be those Elon Musks, but it's definitely something that, like you said, it's not just happens over a year. You don't see the years and years and years behind someone's hard grafting and almost like the business masks all that, I guess. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I think it's one of those things as well, I think going the route of trying to retain control and build it from the ground up, I think, one, it means you're hungry for success. It means it matters more. You've got more of a stake in what you're
Yeah.
creating. And I think that that makes a big difference, because I think you can spot somebody who has the game plan of, oh, we'll create something, we'll get funding, we'll exit in 3 to 5 years. Not that there's anything wrong in that, but you can spot it a mile off, and that way you know where the motivation's coming from. And it's motivated by an external factor, which is money. And of course, business is there to make money, and that's perfectly fine. But if somebody is doing it because they've got a real need to solve a particular problem, a particular passion, like a James Dyson or a Steve Jobs, you know that the end result is going to be amazing.
And that's really, really great. I love that. I think it's the motivation. And when you said that, it kind of made me think, at the end of the day, there's two different types of entrepreneurs almost. It's almost, at the end of the day, you could be the entrepreneur that if you made £5, yet you're targeted to make 1,000, you could be really, really, kind of withdrawing to yourself and think, oh my goodness, this is not for me. Or you could be the entrepreneur that says, well, actually, I've solved about 500 things on my list, and be really excited about that. And that's definitely the way to go. It's not, the actual motivation behind your business, whether it's money or solving stuff and trying to progress, probably affects the eureka moment I bring it back to. Because if you're solving problems and you're excited and you think, at the end of the day I can sleep well because, okay, I haven't made anything, but I've solved this amount of stuff. I know I'm on the right track. That's where you feel, wow, I've got that moment, I've got the eureka moment. And if you're on the other side of it and you're not making any money and you think, oh, you're going to bed, you think, oh, I don't have any money, I haven't solved anything, it's not going to be there. So it's definitely, that's very interesting. It's definitely the motivation behind your business. And they always say, obviously, love what you do and don't do it for the money. And that's definitely important.
Mm-hmm. And have you ever, you were alluding to earlier your conversations with founders. Have you ever had to have that really difficult conversation with somebody that actually what they've come up with really does need to go back to the drawing board? And how do you get them to keep that motivation to perfect and refine what they're doing?
But yeah, again, very interesting. I've only had that a couple times, and it was not a very nice thing to go through. The actual, when people kind of put their hopes and dreams and stuff in, it doesn't work out, the actual motivation of them obviously takes a hit. It's just natural for anyone, and especially people who haven't been through the process multiple times, or it's their first time going through the process of running a business. They take that as I'm a failure, and it's probably something I've been through. I've definitely been through, where I've done something, it hasn't worked out, and I've definitely failed. I haven't been able to think on a bigger scale. So my kind of position in that isn't to kind of take over the business and start injecting loads of ideas for them. That's not my role in the business, because if I'd end up doing that, it's almost like I'm leading their business. I'm not a founder of their business. They're only coming to me for the tech. But it is trying to convey the bigger picture of it, and that's really important from my side, which is saying this one thing. It's almost like you've lost the battle, but you haven't lost the war. You've lost this one thing, and that's fine. But look at the bigger picture. There's such a bigger picture here, and I think that's where the big ideas come from. The great ideas come from. If you can focus on the bigger picture, then you're definitely going to be, the smaller tasks don't look as bad when they're not going too right.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to offer a different perspective on this as well, because when somebody is in that thing where they feel they've failed, this is why a business is a separate legal entity from the individual. The business might have failed, or the business idea might have failed. It doesn't make somebody a failure as an individual. And I think a lot of people can lose sight of that, particularly when they're putting their heart and soul into it. And I think one of the things that's very important that you've alluded to you and Sunil doing from time to time is to take that step back, to get away from the business and get that clear thinking space to put things into perspective. Because without perspective, you're not going to win the war.
No, exactly, and space is definitely important. I'm very bad with giving myself breaks, and it's only been recently I've kind of whipped my own self into saying, right, well, this is definitely how it's going to work from now on, Jason. And it's definitely important to give yourself space, to give each other space. You know, me and Sunil's been working for a long time now, and it's definitely not been all highs. It's not been all high fives. We've gone through a lot of difficult times together, and even against each other. So again, that whole business idea of when you first start up, oh, I'm just starting with my best friend, everything will be fine, la da 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 da. It's definitely not the case, because you're going to go through. It's a battle, isn't it? You need someone to almost pick you up when you're feeling down and sand ideas off. But yeah, you definitely need space from that, and to take away the feeling of I've failed because that process has failed. You know, businesses, again, like a Rubik's Cube, there's so many different combinations, so many different ways you can go about stuff. Now, if you make the wrong turn on a Rubik's Cube, it doesn't mean that you as a person is all bad through and through. It just means you've made the wrong turn, or maybe the market's not there. You know, there's so many different things. So, yeah, that's definitely important. It's definitely a separate entity. You might not feel like it's a separate entity because you're so close to it. You're working on it every day. And again, like what we've done with Mum Means Business with Business Crowd, it's something where you have to, it's something that you have to like remove yourself from and think, well, this is almost like my child. You know, if my child does something, your child is its own person. Like a business is its own thing. You can't really blame yourself for everything the child does. So even though you can influence the business, you can guide it, you can put effort into it, you know, you can't go around blaming yourself, because that's definitely not going to get you anywhere.
Absolutely. So take responsibility, learn from what you can do differently, but absolutely.
But again,
and down to today is that's what's going to influence your success at the end of the day.
And again, Eureka Moment as well. It's really how you look at it. Eureka Moments, they're not there every day, but once you do get them, you ride them, and you ride the wave of thinking, yeah, this is great. I've cracked it. I've got, whether that's solving a problem, or it could be, oh, I've solved a problem, so money's come in. Again, that Eureka Moment, you need to ride it, and it's not to say that if you don't have the Eureka Moment, that, you know, everything's gone to the world's gone upside down. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a mindset there. I think that's touching on mindset.
Yeah, absolutely a fascinating topic. So thank you so much for sharing your ideas on that with us today. And I'm hoping that will be a real inspiration. There's some real words of wisdom that I think entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs and business people can take from that. So thank you very much for your time today, Jason.
Great. Thank you very much, Laura, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Okay, thank you.